Welcome to the Plato Paradigm, a paradigm shift in reading Plato's dialogues. Episode 1, Plato and Paradigms. In this podcast, I'm going to be reading through Platonic dialogues to show how dialogues should be read and not the way they are read at the moment or for the last 2,500 years. So far, people have had a problem with Platonic dialogues because Plato doesn't appear in any of them. He doesn't express his own opinions, and that makes it very difficult to discover what Plato himself thought. In the old days, from the time of Plato himself onwards, until today actually, people have overcome the problem by assuming that one or other of the characters in the dialogue speaks for Plato. And this can be Socrates, usually it is in the early dialogues, or it could be the Athenian guest or the Eleatic guest, or in one particular dialogue, Timaeus. And the problem with that is that all of these characters contradict themselves and each other, and that's important if they are all the mouthpieces of Plato. They shouldn't contradict each other. To overcome that problem, we have to have another solution, and that is irony. Socrates in particular says things which I might agree with. Therefore, when he says things like that, I would say that's Plato. Plato said whatever it is that Socrates says, which I agree with. But here, in this place and this place and this place, there are many more places where Socrates contradicts what he says when I agree with him. In these places, Socrates is obviously ironic. He's not saying what he actually thinks. And in this way, we solve the problem. And to understand Plato's philosophy, all I have to do is collect every sentence in all of the dialogues where I've decided that Plato is speaking, join them all up, ignore everything else because it's all ironic, and that is Plato's philosophy. This works really well because I will always get something consistent, because anything inconsistent is ironic. And the only problem with this is that there are many, many different Platonist philosophies, because everybody has their own idea of what is correct, what is not correct. Everybody agrees with different things that Plato says. For anyone serious about Plato, this is obviously bad methodology, and we should be looking for something else. I'm not the first to be unhappy with this way of looking at Plato. Other people have recognized that Plato writes dialogues, and they have decided that the dialogues don't reach any conclusions, and that's what's important. And this began with Arcesilaus in the 3rd century BC, when the dialogue doesn't end in a concrete conclusion, or if it does end in a conclusion but it's obviously wrong, or if Socrates says that he doesn't know something. These are all clues that Plato himself advocated skepticism, that you cannot reach a conclusion. It's better not to reach a conclusion, and wisdom is to be found in acknowledging ignorance. I don't like this idea either. This doesn't seem to work. For this to work, you've only really needed 1 or 2 dialogues, but we have 35, 36, depending on which dialogues we assume are authentic. I've spent over 40 years analyzing Platonic dialogues as philosophical dramas, and it was quite successful. I came to conclusions which didn't contradict each other from dialogue to dialogue. But it was only when I examined the big dialogue in the middle, Politeia, or the Republic, that I realized it was so big because a lot of time is spent talking about things which are completely irrelevant to the actual subject of the dialogue. And it revolves around the idea that the surface discussion is absolute nonsense, but this is because the characters represent ideas. Now, the ideas can't be dramatized as such. You cannot dramatize justice, you cannot dramatize the good, but you can dramatize a concrete representation of something as near as possible to the idea. For example, you can dramatize a just man or a good man. So Plato's first step in dramatizing an idea is to make a paradigma, a paradigm. Now, before we look at Plato's use of paradigm, we should look at the everyday use of paradigm in Greek. Imagine a potter in classical Athens. He wants to make some pots of a certain type. One way to do this is to look at a basic model of that type of pot, for example, an amphora or a crater, a mixing bowl. You look at the basic model, it has the shape, and that's all. And then you make your particular pots, the ones you want to sell. And these are the ones that you will show clients. Now, to show in Greek is degnumi. The thing shown is a degma. So you have degmata, that's the plural. You show the degmata to your clients, but the one that you don't show your clients is the model according to which you made these. And that is the model which is beside the degmata. So that's paradigma, which we call paradigm. A paradigma is a basic model, and the degmata are all according to that paradigma with additional details such as drawings, patterns, all sorts of designs. And so going back to Plato, he does the same thing. He gets an idea, makes a concrete representation of it, and this is the paradigma. And then he designs characters, actual characters with details. So, for example, if you have the paradigma of a good man who appears bad, and another paradigma of a bad man who appears good, all you have to do, as Plato, is find someone who reflects that sort of paradigma. And for the good man who appears bad, you can find, obviously, Socrates. Socrates, for him, was a good man who a lot of people thought was bad. And in a dialogue, he can dramatize this. Now, the degma is the paradigma with details. And the details, for example, are man, Greek, Athenian, ugly, all sorts of details like that, which in the end are irrelevant. Socrates is a degma which allows us to discover the paradigma, and even the paradigma is a representation of the idea. So we're aiming at the idea. And the same with the paradigma of the bad man. He can look for a historical figure who looks a bit like the paradigma, and that will be the degma of the bad man. And then in the dialogue, he just has to put them together. And when you have an extreme good man who appears bad and an extreme bad man who appears good, the conversation is going to be a mess. And this is what happens. We get dialogues which are appalling philosophically. They are not philosophically deep. The language is the language of the degmata, the characters, and that isn't where the philosophy is. The philosophy is actually in the characters, and in the characters insofar as they reflect the paradigma, or the paradigmata, and that's what we're supposed to aim at. Now, this is a different way of reading dialogues, and it's so different that I couldn't resist calling it a paradigm shift. And what I would like to do in the podcast from the next episode onwards is read through a few dialogues to show how much is missing when philosophers just look at what they think is the philosophy in the dialogue. We have to read through the whole dialogue and show how from the conversation we gradually build up the characters, the degmata, and then from the degmata we reach the paradigmata, and then from there we get to the ideas at the top, the ideas for which Plato wrote the dialogues. In the next episode, we'll start reading Hippias Minor. And Hippias Minor isn't a character who's younger than another Hippias Major. The fact is that there are two dialogues with Hippias in both of them. Therefore, the shorter dialogue is called Hippias Minor, and the longer dialogue is Hippias Major. So we'll be reading the shorter dialogue. And because it's so short, we should see fairly quickly what I mean by degmata, paradigmata, and an idea behind the whole dialogue. I intend to read through the whole dialogue line by line and explain what is being said and what can be learnt, because everything in a dialogue is relevant. We are not going to discover who the characters are and what the characters represent if we ignore most of what is usually considered to be dramatic ornamentation. By my calculation, the dialogue should take about 28 episodes, and we will finish it. And there will be philosophical conclusions. It's not just literary criticism. You don't have to be a professional philosopher to follow this. All you need to do is forget everything you've ever been told about Plato.